Good afternoon. Hopefully this will not be coming to you from beyond the grave. I will be lying on a hospital bed. No, I'm going to Wakefield, which is a bit like a hospital. I'll be lying on a hospital bed getting dye squirted into my arteries to check my dodgy ticker. If I do die, you'll all be able to say you remember exactly where you were when the news came through that Tom had checked out. Cartooning. I went to primary school in Rongotia, and the first day of school I drew a picture of the Phantom on a horse with his dog running beside him, and the teacher screamed and ran from the room and brought the headmaster back, and the other teacher was a 3-classroom school. They all gathered around me and made a huge fuss of me. At the age of 5 I realised I had a skill, a gift that other people didn't have. And I went to Lytton Street Primary School after that, and they gave me my own box of chalks, and I used to walk around the school behind teachers who got me to draw Spanish galleons, Maori fortified pars, and I was the best artist at school, and the teacher stood behind me going, "Oh, he's so clever, look at him, little Tommy's so clever," and my head went and I started drawing pictures of teachers on the blackboard when they left the room, made all the kids laugh, and the rot set in. I knew then that I had a gift, had a skill. I could draw people's faces and make people laugh, and that was absolutely intoxicating. And I decided right then I had to do that as a career, but there were no ads in the papers in the 60s saying cartoonists wanted, so I went off and tried to be a vet till I was thrown out of vet school. The Professor Charleston said, "Look, Tom, you'd be a hopeless vet. You'd be an alcoholic before you were 30 and facing all sorts of damages suits. Go off and be a cartoonist. That's what you're good at." But there were no vacancies. One day when I was down in Wellington looking after my infant son, I was a house husband. I looked after Sean from when he was 6 months old till he was 5. I took Sean with me and a cartoon of Norman Kirk, and I brought that into the Sunday Star Times, and Frank Hayden said, "It's good, give us another one next week." So I brought another one back the next week, and another one, and another one, and after about 6 weeks, Ian Cross rang me up and said, "Come and see me." I went and saw Ian Cross, and he said, "We want you to be our parliamentary correspondent." I'd never been a journalist, I didn't own a typewriter, but I found after 6 weeks I was the parliamentary correspondent for the New Zealand Listener with my own column, with my own photograph. I had flaming red hair, platform-soled shoes, flared trousers, and I had my own column. And I did cartoons of Rolling and Kirk and Muldoon, and really very, very quickly started to irritate them all. All I wanted to do was to make fun of them. Muldoon didn't like the cartoons I did of him. He was very, very grumpy about them, and he stopped me in the corridor one day and said, "Mr. Scott, isn't it? I read an article of yours in the Listener. I didn't know you could write." And I said, "Oh, I didn't know you could read." And that was the end of my very brief friendship with Muldoon, but I loved drawing him. He was so quick to draw. I can draw Muldoon blindfolded with my left hand. It's a party trick. No one cares any longer, and I say, "Is it time for my party trick?" And they all say, "Bugger off." But I can draw Muldoon blindfolded with my left hand. He was wonderful to draw. Muldoon had a very interesting face. He had beautiful cornflower blue eyes, like Paul Newman. When you got up close, Muldoon's eyelid, but his eyelids were like a warty toad. They would open like this, clank, clank, clank. And he had rows of warts up his top eyelid, like an old toad. They were reptilian, really quite sinister. But then when the eyelids opened up, chank like that, you looked in on these cornflower blue eyes of surprising beauty and intelligence. You could see this is a very intelligent man, and these warty little thing here, the nose is like that, and the mouth came down, and liver spots here, and the hair there. And to annoy him, just to annoy him, I would make him look, even to make him look really short, you'd make the collar the collar of his jacket would sort of poke up way over his head, and that said short ass. And sometimes you'd do his hands like that. That also says this man is short. Women are harder to draw. Their faces are delicate, they're prettier, and also people think you're cruel. If I did cartoons of Helen Clark, people went, "Oh, that's mean. You've been very mean to Helen." I said, "Look what I'm doing to Jim Bolger. Look what I'm doing to Winston." They said, "You can't be mean to women." I think that'll gradually change when women, quite rightfully, make half the mistakes in the world. Why should the men have to make all the mistakes? It's about time the woman made half the mistakes, and that's changing. Though you can get criticised for, I used to get criticised for Helen Clark's nose, but then when I started drawing John Key, someone rang up and said, "You're being anti-Semitic." A professor of politics up at Victoria University said, "Tom, you're being very anti-Semitic. You're drawing John Key with a big nose. I said, he has a big nose. And I've drawn Helen Clark with a big nose. And John Key doesn't mind. In fact, I'm not sure whether it's flattering or not, but he buys the odd original, and I think politicians love being drawn. Michael Laws bought everyone. Every single cartoon I did of Mike Laws, he wanted Michael Laws, he wanted the original. Winston has never asked for one. That's proof that they were irritating him. I did one of him and Jim Bolger, which I'm really proud of. It was a double whammy. It pissed Bolger and Winston off at the same time. My friend Richard Griffin used to work for Jim Bolger, and Dick would open the Evening Post in the evening when there was an Evening Post, and he'd look at my cartoon. If I was taking a mickey out of Jim Bolger, Dick would try and shimmy down the outside of the beehive to get away, but the bellow would go up from Bolger's office, and Dick would, "Griffin, get in here!" And Dick would go into Bolger's office rather, oh God, and Jim would be standing there. He's a good guy, Jim, he's a friend of mine now, but back then, wasn't so keen on me, and he'd be pointing his big fat King Country Farmer's finger, jabbing it at a cartoon. "Doesn't your mate realise when he attacks me, he's attacking the country?" So Jim didn't like the cartoons I did of him. In fact, they're not supposed to. So I don't mind when they don't like them, but mercifully, all the politicians make mistakes equally, and if you take the mickey out of David Cunliffe, a few days later John Key's done something, you can take the mickey out of him. The polls for David Cunliffe at the moment are so bad, I actually feel mean when I do cartoons on them, but that's the news. That's the news. Sometimes you do cartoons of people, they are in the news. I did it with a friend of mine, I won't name him, but he sulked for ages. Paul Holmes wouldn't speak to me for 3 or 4 years because I did cartoons taking the mickey out of him, though when he got his knighthood, he invited me to the investiture. I went up to his estate, his grand estate like Tolstoy's, in Hawke's Bay, and there were all these framed pictures of mine all around the wall. And Paul said, "Tom, I don't know why I was so upset," and he had them all framed on the wall. This is my new map drawer. It's taken from a boat. The folklore is that there's a cannonball. It hit the desk, a cannonball. I think it's appropriate to have a map drawer with big damage at sea. I rarely ever use colour, and this is one I did on Christchurch, the heart, and you kind of hope that Christchurch will survive. I suspect it's not going to bear any resemblance to what we all knew and loved. It's a tragedy, absolute tragedy, and I think that alongside all the beautiful behaviour, there's been some unbelievable greed, and some people have made astonishing fortunes out of the catastrophe. This one I did last week, and Nicky Hager, John Clark once described someone as having a face like a sack full of chisels, and Nicky Hager has a face like a sack full of chisels. This guy has a face, I don't know, like a pig's testicle. He's very easy to draw though. I love men with slightly different face. I was going to say ugly, but that's harsh. Men who are not Brad Pitt are perfect. And he's sort of sweaty and corrupt, and he probably is. There's one on the Middle East, which I'm really proud of. It's you think when you saw those anniversary footage from World War One, and the former enemies from 2 world wars, former enemies in 2 world wars can comfort each other in front of a statue. This must be possible in the Middle East. Probably needs this generation of politicians to die, and hopefully, and maybe their children or their grandchildren will say, "This is crazy. Our DNA is identical. This land is special to all of us. We'll have to share it." The word "share" is quite an important thing. It's only one planet. We have to share. We have to share the resources, the water. We have to share everything. And I was proud of that cartoon.
Yeah.
So cartoons sometimes, I think they're not permanent. I don't think you should ever do a cartoon hoping it will belong to history. That would be wrong. If you thought you were doing something permanent, your cartoon would die on the page. But sometimes, by chance, by accident, by luck, they do have a permanence. And I'm very, very proud that the city called Caen in France, it was flattened in World War One and flattened again in World War Two. So they built a permanent peace museum in France, and they have a permanent cartoon memorial to peace. And 2 of my Dominion Post cartoons are hanging in that museum. So maybe that's my little piece of immortality. And it'd be nice to think that they stay there for a wee while. So I'm proud of that fact. Smug even, dangerously smug. And if it does come from beyond the grave, live on, live life to the full, forget about me, just carry on, and that's all I've got to say, really.